All right, welcome back to part 2 of the Pro Football Doc podcast. Sorry about that early segment. I just felt like it was necessary. It just broke my heart to see that this weekend. But let's move on to football and the fun sides of things. First of all, preseason injury preview is here. Download it for free. The website is still free. Lots of updates, etc. here. But let's go through the usual rundown here of athletes and then some video and some other things. And I want to actually touch on uh, Patrick Mahomes and Fernando Tatis in the end of this. So first of all, let's talk about Dak. Dak, here we go. Second MRI, good news, on pace, the whole deal. Great news. Got no issue with it. Happy with it. I've said all along that I believe Dak Prescott will be ready for week 1 in terms of the ankle. May not be 100%. And with this early preseason shoulder latissimus dorsi issue, he will be ready with the shoulder as well. However, it's not a nothing deal. The Cowboys started with words of fatigue, Mike McCarthy said. Well, fatigue doesn't show up on MRI. They talked about the latissimus strain. It's mild day to day. Well, we're now 3 weeks. Thankfully, he's back at practice, but he won't be full go. He's still on pace, as the article says. I'm glad a second MRI shows healing, but you still have to be careful. The hard knock stuff was a little bit interesting. First of all, it's not unusual to need 2 surgeries, especially if bone is sticking through the skin. The first surgery is to clean up the skin, clean up the infection, make sure there's no infection before you put hardware in, because putting hardware in, any bacteria sticks to it and any low-level infection expands. You always need to avoid an Alex Smith situation. By the way, congratulations to Alex Smith. He's now an ESPN analyst. But look, Alex Smith, it was a dirty wound. The early surgery, it led to a really bad chain of events, and they did a really good job saving his leg. But that's why it's normal to have 2 surgeries with Dak. The other thing with Hard Knocks is they said, oh, yeah, they talked to the Yankees and Rangers. That's not unusual. Doctors and medical professionals and athletic trainers share. When I was in the NFL, it wasn't unusual for another team doctor to call me or put out word by email saying, has anyone ever seen this before, if it's something unusual. That's how you get better. You share knowledge and information. And we do it routinely among medical personnel in the NFL. But when necessary, we go outside too. For example, in this case here, with a throwing athlete like Dak. Although a pitcher's throwing motion is different than Dak's quarterback throwing motion, it's still throwing, and it makes sense. Kudos to the Cowboys medical staff and athletic trainers for asking. Why not? Maybe you learn something new or different. They certainly have more experience with throwing injuries. And so nothing unusual there with Dak. In the end, he'll be ready to go, but I still am more worried about Amari Cooper than Dak Prescott. And here is Amari on the field. Now, this is a few days ago, but he certainly doesn't look 100%. Now, that's Dak with some tosses to him, easy ones. But Amari still doesn't look 100% there. Amari's going to play. Dak is going to play. That isn't the issue. It's really more Amari's going to have to deal with it and deal through the injury rather than be at 100%. But Dak should be good to go by the start of the season. Let's move on to the next big story. The next big one, of course, it's always quarterbacks. Quarterback Carson Wentz. Well, let's talk about Jordan Love for a second before Carson Wentz. Jordan Love, MRI normal, MRI clean, but if you look at Pro Football Doc, you'll see that what we said is it's not necessarily clean. Suffered a shoulder injury, but the way that it happened on the strip sack, it causes a rotator cuff strain. MRI clean, but the Packers still need to be careful, and they're going to miss some time. And the Packers only have 2 quarterbacks today at practice. Jordan Love will be okay. It's just going to cost him preseason time is all. Probably will not play the Jets game. Now they'll be protecting Rodgers and protecting Love. Don't be surprised if they sign another camp arm, which my guess is they might do or should do. All right, Carson Wentz. Jim Irsay said Carson Wentz needs to be 100% or he won't play week 1. That cements it. He's not going to play week 1 in my mind. If they decide to change their mind on that, then he might play. Could he play week 1? I think he could at less than 100%. He seems to be recovering well from that bone excision foot surgery. But really the deal is to get to 100%, I think it's October. I don't know if it's early October or late October. I think Quentin Nelson will return more quickly based on the position that he plays, not questioning Wentz's toughness. And they want to be careful with Wentz so that one injury doesn't beget another. For example, Dak Prescott, was his ankle not being 100% leading to the shoulder strain? Might be. Last thing you want is Wentz not stepping into throws the right way and injuring his shoulder or his elbow. So it's smart for the Colts to be careful, and I think they will continue to be careful. All right, let's continue with our rundown here. Devonte Smith returns to practice. Still a little cautious with his right knee MCL. Look, he's fluid. He looks good. He's a great player, but that's not exactly a one-step hard cut. I mean, choppy steps, that route right there, that's not going to get the separation that he needs. But he's getting closer. He's increasing his conditioning. He's getting back into it. But that sort of cut to the right normally with one step would stress the MCL, which is what he injured. But he is absolutely progressing and getting better. Another note in the NFL, Titans. The Patriots have been doing it for a while. Probably not a surprise. Mike Vrabel, right, from the Patriots at Titans. Braces, mandatory braces for padded practices, begrudgingly. Players don't like wearing the braces. They feel like clunky and it slows them down, makes them feel more robotic. But it can save you from an injury, so I think it makes sense. In games, they might not. In college, in games, they also wear it, typically. But in the NFL, most teams don't require it. The Patriots have. But in any case, the Titans aren't doing that, but just for the padded practices, they're requiring it. And you also see it on lead leg quarterbacks. Mac Jones just played around with one for prophylactic reasons with his lead leg. Not sure if he'll keep it. Tom Brady has. A lot of people have used that lead leg brace. And Joe Burrow undoubtedly will have a lead leg brace on as he continues to recover this off season here. All right, next up here. Before we get to this is actually a critical time of training camp. There are always acclimation injuries, hamstring strains, quad strains, groin strains. They're not all as bad as Rashad Bateman, who needed surgery, who I think will start the season on injured reserve. Not yet, though. If he goes on injured reserve now, he's done for the season. If they wait for the 53 and then put him on injured reserve, he can come back in 3 weeks. And that would be the hope of the Ravens wide receiver. But even the small niggly stuff, the Frank Clark hamstrings, the Allen Robinson hamstrings, the David Montgomery minor ankle tweaks. And we didn't initially post anything on David Montgomery because we thought it was mild and he's practicing, even though there was a lot of speculation otherwise. But all the mild little niggly things now become important, because if you get it week 1 in training camp, you've got time to get better and hit your stride before the regular season. Now with only a couple weeks to go, 3 weeks to go, even a mild or medium hamstring leaks into the regular season. So hopefully a lot of those are out of the way. So injury reports become more important now because of that. Much more out there now. Much more important as injuries now tend to leak into the season. Footnote here. Remember last week and before we talked about the wristbands and COVID? Look, people were saying, it's unfair to identify the players with different color wristbands. They're going to be identified. Look at here. Tom Pelissaro saying only unvaccinated players can be labeled high risk close contact. One of the many competitive advantages. So basically, James Conner and Darrell Daniels, James Conner are not vaccinated. So look, when you walk around the facility and you have to wear a mask all the time, it means you're not vaccinated. So I always thought the color-coded wristband thing wasn't a big deal either way, and there's just some more proof of it. Right, wrong, indifferent, the rules are jury-rigged for you to get vaccinated in the NFL, and it should be, and the league is already headed that way, and it seems all teams will. All right, something fun here I want to talk about. Fernando Tatis, unbelievable. He returns after his 5th shoulder instability issue, admitted to needing surgery come the offseason, gets moved to the outfield, right field, and does it again. Comes back and hits 2 home runs. If the hardest thing you can do in sports is hit a baseball, as many people say, Fernando Tatis is special. He comes off 2 weeks of not playing and hits 2 home runs. He's done it time and again every time he's come off the injured list. Craziness. He's moved to a different position. Craziness. I mean, I don't love the move to a different position. To me, the game is not that easy to just stick him in the outfield. Yes, he's athletic and yes, he can learn, but it's unfamiliar. And to me, there's potentially more danger out there because full speed runs and or running into walls. And if it really is that bad that you have to move him, maybe it's time for surgery. But like, he continues to defy the odds. So my analogy on the outfield is this. If you're driving without a seatbelt, if you're playing a sport with a labrum tear, quote, with a broken seatbelt, do you want to drive in city traffic or do you want to drive on the highway? The advantage of city traffic is its slower speeds. The disadvantage is many more cars and many more chances for accidents, but lower injury accidents typically. In the outfield, it's like the highway. Fewer cars, less chance for accidents, but higher speeds. When there is an accident, it's at higher speeds. So which would you rather do without a seatbelt? Drive on the highway or drive in the city? Do you want to play in the outfield or do you want to play at shortstop? Similar comparisons. There's no right answer. And I'm not being critical of the Padres. It's just a tough decision in terms of what's happening there. So one of the things that I thought of, since of course I cover lots of football, etc., but Patrick Mahomes and Fernando Tatis have a lot in common. To me, Fernando Tatis Jr. is to Major League Baseball what Patrick Mahomes is to the NFL. What are the comparisons? Both sons of professional athletes. Both hold themselves up very well to the public and media and are good role models. Both are exceptional athletes. Both have the hair, different hair, and the flair of the games. Both contort their bodies like the Matrix. Patrick Mahomes' arm angle is unbelievable, his release angle. Fernando Tatis, you've probably seen the Matrix-like videos of him avoiding getting hit by a baseball or contorting himself on a slide, etc. And both have made it back through injuries. Fernando Tatis 5 times this year with his shoulder. Patrick Mahomes played the Super Bowl with a turf toe where he needed surgery. Remember the year before when he won the Super Bowl? After he dislocated his kneecap and came back in a little under 4 weeks. Amazing. I think Patrick Mahomes is to the NFL as Fernando Tatis is to Major League Baseball. Young stars with lifetime contracts in small market teams, not only face of the franchise, face of their leagues for a while. I mean, obviously I'm biased. My son, who now is 8, Tatis is his favorite baseball player. He wears number 23. He's got Tatis jerseys. Patrick Mahomes, as some of you know, look, he dressed up for Patrick Mahomes' Halloween, has Mahomes gear and jerseys. His favorite gift was indeed at Christmas time, a Patrick Mahomes signed ball that his sister got for him. I think Fernando Tatis Jr. is the Patrick Mahomes of his league. All right, let's get to the video that I want to share here. Here's the video that we want to share. Here's a picture of my son with Patrick Mahomes, with his Patrick Mahomes Halloween costume. He did get the helmet and the whole deal, the whole rigmarole. But let's go to what happened here. So this is kind of a funny tweet. Football game, college, Arkansas game. They kind of were trolling Bobby Petrino for his motorcycle accident. But let's look at what happens here. This is the AD who gets kicked in the face. So thankfully he's okay. But here's the one thing I wanted to talk about on the sideline. He gets kicked in the face. Look at how far back he is. He's not in the NFL. I'll show you. In the NFL, remember, there's like the thick white line and then the yellow line and then the dotted line is all the way back here. But look at how far out of the way the athletic director is. And the lesson here, he's fine. He just got cleated. But the lesson here is, just like when you're trying to avoid a bull in the ring, you can't back up fast enough. You can't back up far enough. You have to move laterally to get out of the way of the bull. You have to move laterally to get out of the way of the wash and the player coming up on you. They come fast. So that's my little lesson for sideline etiquette for players, coaches, fans, athletic directors. Move laterally to avoid the wash and avoid injury on the sideline. And to be fair, if you haven't been run into at all on the sideline, then you haven't been there enough. Actually, I'll tell a funny story and conclude with this funny story. Troy Polamalu lives in San Diego and now in Hall of Fame, right? One time I inadvertently, because look, they're such great athletes. I ended up giving him a forearm shiver and he was coming to the sideline fast and hard. I backed up, I moved to the side, and he was still coming so hard, and there was people next to me. I couldn't move out of the way quickly enough that I thought he was going to knock me over. So I put out my forearm to sort of stop him from like bowling me over and, also hold him up, right? He's much bigger and faster than me. But being the great athlete that he is, he stopped on a dime, and my forearm shiver, it wasn't hard, was unnecessary because he just stopped and cut. But I did kind of make contact with his arm and shoulder lightly, and he kind of turned and looked at me and kind of like, what gives? And I was like, oh, I'm sorry, what gives? But what's funny about that is the next day, about 10 players high-fived me because they all saw it on film on Monday, and they're like, good job, Doc, forearm shiver. But they were kidding me. They're giving me a hard time. I mean, I'm sorry, Troy. I know it didn't hurt. It was like a little love tap, but they do come fast on the sidelines. And, the athletic director of Arkansas knows that already and knows it now. Anyways, I wanted to end on a more lighthearted note after the more somber part one of this week's Pro Football Doc podcast. Thanks for watching and listening. YouTube, Apple, please continue with the 5-star reviews. And we'll see you again next week on the Pro Football Doc podcast. Thanks for listening and watching.